Welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast.
Who does your Instagram algorithm think that you are, whether for better or worse?
You know how you figure this out? You hit the explore feature.
Yeah.
Right. So if I hit the explore feature, I've got about 30% of, okay, so there's 15 things that pop up here, or 14 things that pop up here that are in the first feed. 3 of them are like bodybuilders posing.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there's a couple people doing some cool like fitness things. Like this looks like maybe like somebody like my mom or my mom's age doing a snatch. That's kind of cool. It's a grandma. Then there's a bunch of food. There's a ton of food things. There's meat and eggs are in 3 pictures right here. One of them is actually and I click on a lot of these things, but they're like food sorting or like food like production, hacks or machines, like machinery. Like this is a video of a machine that basically separates whites and yolks.
So you need a machine for
that. There's a vat of yolks and they're doing it at like
they're
scale.
doing it scale. Okay.
There's like hundreds of eggs going through this thing. This is a woman eating a raw steak.
This all sounds really accurate.
Yep. And then there's of course the this coffee maker.
Nice. Yeah, coffee. Got some coffee in there.
A coffee grower and a coffee maker and somebody who's trying to teach a fitness concept of bracing more effectively.
Nice.
And then a Conor McGregor posts.
Okay.
With Putin.
Yeah. Yeah.
You saw that. Anyway.
Yeah.
The caption says, Conor McGregor broke security protocol to try and take a photo with Putin, and he almost died.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. What about you? What's your...
Well, a while back, I was really following a lot of fitness accounts to get a sense of what other people are doing in social media on the fitness landscape. And then I just got overloaded with the women with the big butt, algorithm kind of thing. And I was like, I gotta clean this up a little bit. It was just too much for me to be staring at every day. So I just unfollowed almost all the fitness accounts. And then I just started following lots of dogs and cats. And when I go to bed at night with my kids, I read them a story and show them, we look at cute animals together on Instagram.
Oh, cute.
So my explore is like almost entirely like puppies and kittens with like some random like ab shots mixed in.
Nice.
Instagram totally thinks I own a dog. Like I always get the ads for like the pet, accessories, things like that. But
that's wild.
Yeah.
Well, then the second question is like, what
ads do you get?
Yeah, what ads do you get? Like, what is Instagram trying to sell you?
I always get the ads for women with small boobs, like the bras. I'm like, how'd you know?
Nice.
Yeah, and I get ads for like these like businessy things that are so tempting for me. Like there's this one, I've almost bought it so many times. It's like a card deck of like workshop and storytelling ideas that you can use in like your business marketing and like that stuff. I'm just like a sucker for.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Are you hitting the purchase button on these things too?
I'm real tempted. I think I made it to the cart, but it was like in pounds and I didn't want to convert it to dollars. So yeah. Close though.
I don't know how this really happened, but like, we recently moved into a new house. So we're like, kind of setting up a couple of the rooms with some new furniture, and my wife has been like doing most of the like curating and figuring out what we're to order, and then she ordered some things, and we happen to have a lot of boxes at our house right now, but this company, I don't know, let's call it like Ardeo or something like that, delivered a chair yesterday, and then I'm on Instagram and I got a freaking ad from this company.
Isn't that creepy?
It's so creepy. And I was like, oh, that's kind of nice. But like, I'm just getting peppered with like furniture ads.
I know what you're up to.
Oh my God. It's terrible.
It's
and
crazy.
I'm like, and then of course I click on it and then that's just going to get me some more of them. And geez Louise.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm not that into furniture, although it's like, it's nice to kind of feel like, oh, the house is coming together and we can just chill on getting new things. We painted the garage and a couple bedrooms and a living room And so the garage gym is really going to get dialed. Really getting dialed.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, no, it looks like this gym.
It looks like this gym. Did you
Same
do the
wall.
same color?
It's white trim, gravel gray.
Benjamin Moore.
Same flooring from Olheco, same equipment, everything's the same.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to feel like I'm never in a new place.
Yeah.
I'm always in the same place.
Same place every day.
Okay, well, then what was the last thing that you did nutritionally that you thought that felt like a fad or felt like I got influenced into trying this thing?
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you influenced my nutrition a lot for sure, just being around you. You influenced me to try the Keon protein powder. And and I'm liking it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was like something I put in like in the
practical protein guide,
yeah,
which we include with our Persist subscription. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're going to discuss today, right? Is you got how to be wary of the influence out there of these socials.
Yeah,
and we're also let me just remind us, bioavailability. We're going to just address.
Oh yeah, I'm dying to address this one.
Biosustainable. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we're kind of circling around this, but both of us, I think, are always looking around at what the trends are on Instagram. That's kind of part of our job, and we are exposed to a lot of accounts that talk about different diets, and a lot of our participants of our programs and our audience also are active on social media. And so we're kind of getting at this question of like, how do you take in information from Instagram and decide to translate that into something that you might try for your nutrition, and how do all these things come together?
Yeah, I would say that I like to continuously look around at a lot of the available information that's out there. It's just that social media is like the quickest way to get it lately. It's certainly far from the most complete, source.
Exactly.
I could go onto PubMed and I could dig into, current relevant research on topics. That's slow. It's and it's not always the most current stuff that's out there. Mm-hmm. It's the most current published stuff, but publications and research in the clinical setting, or even meta-analysis and epidemiology, like that tends to be many months, if not years behind, what's actually happening in practice out there, because people need to go and experiment with something and trial hypotheses just in the real world, where they're not, bogged down by needing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of grant money and, getting participants and blah, 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 and then going through the peer review process. Like, they just need to go try it, and enough people need to have success with it for someone to be like, let's do a study on that, know? And so it's like, well, if you're tuned in and you're plugged into what's happening in the day-to-day, which nowadays, like fitness information, health and fitness information is just getting streamed through podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all these places. If you're like you can be on the cutting edge, and you can be like reading a bunch of bullshit too, but it's all mixed in there. So it's like, can I pay attention to it? I like to pay attention to the things that, one, like I get like this intuitive sense, like, oh, there's something to that. I want to understand that. Or, hey, that's challenging a thought that I have. Maybe I should listen. I also really like to pay attention to what other people are paying attention to.
Yeah.
Why have a million people decided that this was worth listening to?
Yes.
I want a million people to decide that I'm worth listening to. What is this person saying that, not to say like, oh, I want to copy what this person's doing in terms of content, but what about their delivery? What about the way, energy, tone, content is connecting with people?
Yep.
And then so anyway, we can discuss how we've approached some of those influencers and what we can learn from their influential process, and then maybe give our listeners some tools of like, how do you wade through this stuff? Should you focus on this new trend that you're seeing, or try this new thing, or where can you get a better understanding of it? And we've had people write in like, hey, I've seen this going on. What do you think about that?
Right.
Which gives us great topics to discuss here on the podcast, which hopefully help you better understand what we're seeing out there. I just had what felt like a very informative call with my coaching staff,
Yes.
our coaching staff. We've got 8 coaches now that work for functional bodybuilding. And we talked about Ben Patrick, knees over toes guy. And we talked about animal-based diets and the various influential social media figures that are promoting it, that are getting a lot of traction these days, and set a context for it. What's happening out there? What are people going to be asking us about as professionals? And with context, then you can really connect with an audience and help them better understand how can you use this information for yourself. And that's ultimately what we want. We don't want people just following blindly. We want people to say, let me take in information and then decide how this is going to work for me.
Yeah. Yeah, we really promote the thinking athlete mentality, where you can think for yourself and take in information and decide how best to apply it to your own situation, likely with the help of a coach if you have one. And the way that I start to think about Instagram diets and how people take information that they're seeing on social media and start to apply it to their own nutrition paths really also brings in an element of the marketing lens, because that's always how I'm looking at things on Instagram. And I'm always thinking, who is potentially profiting from this information, and what are they potentially spinning, and how can I verify things? So I'd also just like to talk about how we might go and research something and, oh, I saw that person doing this on Instagram. Like, how do you know if something is legit?
Well, how do you know if something's legit? Satya?
Well, I mean,
excuse me,
Go
generally
ahead. Go
say,
ahead.
how do you start to think about that? And then let's use a specific example that help people to say like, oh, yeah, I know what she's talking about. I was wondering if that was legit. Wait, how did Satya go and investigate whether that was legit?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have both been very curious about the animal-based way of eating recently. We both talk about Liver King quite a lot behind the scenes. We both follow him on Instagram.
Let's be clear. I talk about Liver King a lot. You very patiently listen and periodically will interject or have an opinion, but I'm the one that talks about him a lot. So I don't want to drag you into the mud on this one.
Well, I think Liver King is a fascinating example from a marketing perspective and from a nutritional perspective.
Yeah.
And along with that, Carnivore MD, who's
2.0.
2.0. Wait, who was 1.0? Was there? Are there two?
He was 1.0. But
Oh, he had to reboot his account.
He got banned or something. I don't know. And then there's also a Carnivore MD, another guy named Sean Baker.
Is he 3.0?
No, he's Carnivore MD. And then I think there was Carnivore MD 1.0. And then I don't know. I don't know the whole story, but it's Carnivore MD 2.0.
Yeah. Well, it's gotten me thinking a lot, because like you said, it challenges a lot of the assumptions that I've always made about nutrition. And so when something challenges like that, it just starts to get my curiosity muscle revved up. And I'm like, ooh, like, what is that about? Like, what's going on here? What's behind the scenes? And I'm sure you're the same way, and I'd love for you to talk about your approach as well. But just to use one example, it's like, okay, Carnivore MD says that vegetables have anti-nutrients on a scale of toxicity. Like, oh, that sounds really bad. So it's like, okay, what I think to myself, like, is he profiting by, like, giving me this information? Yes, he's selling supplements and books. What kind of background does this person have? He's board certified in psychiatry. He's not like an internist. He's not a family medicine practitioner. So these are just, I'm not saying these are blanket things where I'm like, oh, well, that means everything he says is trash. It's just, okay, this is a data point. This is a data point. I'm just trying to contextualize and get the lay of the land of like, who is this person? What is their background? What are they potentially gaining by like spinning this a certain way? And also, you know, doing some research into the specific points that they make, maybe going on to PubMed. I like to go on PubMed. I like a little PubMed. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
It's great. I was in medical school.
Yeah.
Fucking hated it.
It's not as sexy as Instagram for sure.
It is not sexy at all.
So how do you think about like, okay, here's this guy, like, because you're so open-minded to nutrition concepts, which I think is amazing because you're willing to suspend all of your past, you know, extensive experience and training and, you know, the research that you've done. And you're like, okay, yeah, let's try on something new. Like, how do you decide what's good information to follow?
Well, I mean, I think both the points that you just mentioned are really valid. It's like, is this person profiting off of it, you know? And is this person, you know, what are their credentials, you know? And so I always place a high value on people who live what they do.
Yeah.
And that means having a track record that goes back, you got to go back many years. So I like to investigate people like, well, what's Carnivore MD 2.0's like background?
Yeah.
How long has he been doing this? You know, what's Liver King's background? I mean, he's relatively new to the social media scene, so there's not a ton out there, but it's, you know, because I've heard from people that know him well, it's like, oh, I get a little bit more of the understanding of his backstory and how he approaches, you know, has he been doing the ancestral thing for 6 months or has he been doing it for his whole life, or like, what is his deal?
Yeah.
So that's always pretty important to me. And then I also put a lot of value into people who have overcome, and people generally who are really passionate and come up with real solutions, have had a real problem at some point. So that's another thing. It's like, you don't look like you've ever had an issue with anything. Like, you know, I didn't hear that, you know, Ben Patrick, worst knees of all time, and he overcame them in a way that was profound. And that's why he's so damn passionate about it. And that's why he will not stop talking.
Totally.
And that I want to listen to, you know. Carnivore MD was, you know, battled autoimmunity his whole life. Like debilitating, embarrassing eczema to the point where he was lying to people to say, you know, he's out on a date. It's like, what's wrong with you? He's like, oh, I got poison oak, you know? And it's like, no, it's just inexplicable eczema. I'm a doctor. And he was first board certified internist, then became a psychiatrist. So he's like, I have all this information. I don't know what the hell is going on with my skin.
Okay,
I'm
wait.
like,
he was an internist?
Yes.
I see. Google didn't tell me this. How'd you know that?
Because he talks about being double board certified. I don't know. I did a deeper dive.
You got a deeper dive than me.
I listened to about 100 of his podcasts.
I got some fake news going on.
Well, it's okay. But so he had autoimmune issues, was a raw vegan for a phase of his life, and prior to that was like a dedicated paleo person, and, you know, had explored many different diets and was always, you know, and then his story also is that mental health, why is there not this deeper connection and conversation about mental health as it relates to inflammation in the body? Yeah. And so that was like an investigation he was making over time. And so he went from like raw vegan to like, well, I don't know what to do about this eczema. Like, okay, I'll try this carnivore thing. Yeah. And he like tried it. Like, I try things. And then 3 years later, he's like, fucking buy my supplements. This is the greatest. I'm winning. And it's like, cause he's fucking feeling amazing and he felt like shit, you know? Yep. Kind of similar to Ben. It's like he's winning after a close to a decade of being in pain and having a terrible go at the thing he loved, which was basketball. Yeah. He ended up hating the thing he loved the most in life. Yeah. And okay, well, you overcame that. And, you know, just because one person has success on it, they're a one person story, doesn't tell me like, well, this is truth, but it just gets me to pay more attention. And then in the case of Liver King, you know, the story that I hear and from what I can gather is that behind the Instagram personality, is one of, these are the things I've heard. One of the most giving and generous people that the people I've heard from have ever met. He's been doing this way longer than social media existed. Like the 9 ancestral tenets, the daily routine, the get up in the sun, grounding, like he was doing that before there were cell phones, it sounds like. Like literally, 10 years, 12 years ago, like just, I know there were cell phones back then, but I'm just saying, like, people weren't gramming, right? And he was showing up to Paleo FX symposiums and, like meeting with people and talking about stuff and, just doing his thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what year he started his supplement company, but, he obviously got deeply connected with this idea of like, man, we got to eat nose to tail. Let me help people get this stuff.
Yeah.
And then the personal connections that I can have with, I feel extremely lucky and fortunate that like when I get really interested in somebody, I often have an opportunity to connect with them just because of, I guess, what we've done as a company and as a brand and how people respect me.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in a room with Ben.
Yeah.
I've gotten to talk to him. I DM'd Paul Saladino and he jumped on the phone with me for an hour.
Yeah.
And we talked and I just asked him questions and he was wide open to helping and answering them.
Yes.
Liver King. I shared this with the team, but like, I got approached by him to do a challenge, one of his challenges to help promote what he's all about.
Yep.
Understood. And I said, I can't do it. I can't do your pressing challenge because my shoulder hurts, which launched him into like, you're hurt? Your shoulder hurts? Let's fix that. Let me send you some of my cartilage supplement, which he strongly believes is going to help fix my shoulder. Let me send you some liver. Let me send you some bone marrow. Let me send you all these things and let's get you healthy. And if you can do this, great. If you can't, we'll get you on the next one. You'll be a part of it then. And then I was like, but how can I like learn more about this? All these ways. Send me this super long list of books and resources and, ask them another question. This is what I think about that. This is what, like taking time to answer questions from me.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to like, what's the background of this person?
Yeah.
Have they overcome a big problem?
Yep.
And then their genuine like passion to spread the message by, I know that Carnivore MD isn't going to jump on a phone call with anybody.
Yeah.
And I feel very fortunate that he wants to take time to talk to me, but people give a lot of their energy and time. Is he potentially profiting from that? Like, hey, I'm gonna have a conversation with Marcus. Marcus, like, I want to give something to him. He'll think he'll put me into kind of the good guy category. Mm-hmm. Maybe that will down the line, he'll be talking more about, like, he knows that I'm out here exploring animal-based diets. He's seen my social media. He knows that I'm kind of a fan of it right now. And if I talk about it more, that's good for that business.
Yeah.
But, so it's never just like, there's very few people that are just out there doing things 100% altruism, all for the good of everybody else, not going to profit off. Like, we sell programs.
Yeah,
like
totally.
I'm here talking about fitness and how to navigate, nutrition. And then at the end of the day, it's like, I want you to be a member of Persist so that we can, have a successful business too.
Yeah.
And if I had something that I deeply believed, like you could gain value from, I would try and sell it to you. Like, I don't have a supplement now. We used to, but if I did and I really thought it was great, like, I'd be hitting click the purchase button right now, right? So yes, all of that has to be in, we have to contextualize all those things when we're evaluating who we're looking at. And
no, I love this topic because I think that there is such a great point about, is this company or is this person also just providing things like just to educate people a little bit? And like, I know that's something Ben Patrick's super passionate about. He's like, I don't even care how much I blow up on social media or whatever. He's like, he's playing the game and he's doing what he needs to do to, to win on there. And he does a great job. But you can tell from talking to him, and we've had him here to the gym, that he is just fired up to get people's knees healthier. And
Totally.
it's like, if he could pick, to do that in any situation, he would. It's like he's not thinking about the dollar he's going to make first. So
yeah, and I would, like, I don't know all three of those individuals like on a deep personal level, but I get this feeling of like, when somebody's really, when it appears that somebody has really found like a message and a purpose that they believe in so deeply that they would jump up on a soapbox and preach about it, even if they didn't have 10,000, 20,000, people on their program. They would still do it.
Yeah.
I think I got asked the question, like, I was talking to my buddies. I have this little men's group. We meet every couple weeks. And it was like, okay, in 5 years, let's say you like sold your company, you were like set for life, and you could just pick up and start over and do whatever you want. Like, what would you be doing? I was like, I would more than likely still be doing something in the health and fitness space. Like, I'd be training people. I would be like, maybe doing a more narrowly focused deep dive on one particular subject, but like, I'd probably still be doing this, and, if Ben didn't have ATG and he wasn't the knees over toes guy, like, like he was about 2 years ago before he got on social media, he's like, I was stoked. I'd be in my gym in Florida, just like coaching my 100 people, and they would be pumped and I'd be happy. I was ready that was my life, So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to dig into the self-experimentation aspect because, as you said, it's like, all right, we're all kind of looking around, and let's say that they've passed the vibe check and they seem like good people, and we're contextualizing that they're likely profiting off what they're selling, but hey, everybody is. So like, okay, do we feel like this is legitimate enough based on their background and what they've done to move forward with actually trying something? And I think that this is a really important piece because it's like, I have looked at the literature that several of these people have put out and gone and tried to verify different things for myself. And as you said, the research on PubMed and, the scientific websites is often like these studies have been a couple years behind.
Yeah.
And often the studies are inconclusive because they only account for a narrow set of variables, or you just kind of can't replicate the conditions that individuals experience in their daily lives.
Yeah.
And so what do you suggest is the way to go about verifying something for yourself?
Yeah, it's like, and this is like kind of a sensitive, vulnerable subject for me because I came up in the academic world when we'll call it like almost a decade of education, studying exercise, studying nutrition, science, physiology, and I was practicing things that were about two decades ahead of the academic curriculum.
Yeah.
And it was all wrong. There's a book behind you right now, Exercise Physiology, written by Dr. George Brooks, who was my college professor, and he did some pretty groundbreaking research on uncovering kind of the structure of the mitochondria, and that it's not these little like pill-shaped things in the cell that people draw up on, but that it's this really extensive matrix, and it's got this vast three-dimensional shape to it, and that there's a lactate transporter that moves lactate in and out that actually serves as a fuel source. Lactic acid is not just a waste product, it's a fuel source. He was one of the people to do that. Anyway, really respected in that time in the physiology community. And I remember him sitting up in front of me teaching a course and basically telling me that I was causing massive kidney damage by eating as much protein as I was eating, because that's how I approached nutrition at the time. I was like, really? Okay. So, now it's like evidence-based research shows that was completely false.
Right.
And that this is like commonly prescribed or like recommended practice. But in 2004, when I was in college, that's the message I got from a world-class physiology, nutrition guy.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know. I always like, I understand that the scientific method and peer-reviewed research, clinical-based research, where they're using like clinical trials, where there's control groups, experimental groups, there's blind studies where participants or researchers know or don't know certain aspects of what they're right to control for as many variables as possible. That is the gold standard of how you can prove causation in anything that you want to look at. But like you said, it is virtually, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it is very difficult to do that with the variables that we're encountering in health, fitness. You know, it's like Ben talks about it a lot. It's like, it's going to take decades for people to do the research on what I am proving thousands of times over. So yeah, you want to go and investigate what Paul Saladino is talking about. Mm-hmm. It's going to be difficult to really find conclusive papers that outline essentially like, is animal-based dieting good and real, and is this a bunch of bullshit, and versus or is it great, you know? So back to your question, and I kind of already alluded to it, it's like, well, what did I do? I started with self-experimentation when I was 18 years old. Like, okay, let me first look at myself and control for some variables, and like, what can I change? What's one thing I can change, you know, or what's two things that I can change, and try and keep the rest the same. And is that scientific method? Should I go and publish a research paper because I'm like, hey, in October I started eating liver every day and I feel good? Yeah. It's like, no, that's not going to cut it. But at the end of the day, like, how you feel and your experience is what matters, and how you feel and your experience over long periods of time is what really starts to matter. Yeah. It's like, how'd you feel this month? Yep. Okay. How you still feeling 4 months later? How you still feeling 6 months later? You know, a year, 2, 5 years later. Mm-hmm. And I sure as shit know that, like, when I started to experiment with not being low fat and being like, I'm going to eat some more fat, like, I felt better. Yeah. And you know what? I felt better 3 years later, and I felt better. And when I stopped fearing eating more than 60 grams of fat a day, my body got better, and it stayed that way for a long time. And that was in 2008, you know? So there is a self-experimentation process that has to happen. And I suppose before you even get to that point, it's, let me take stock of what's going on here first, like, what's my baseline, and am I making some more fundamental mistakes before I'm like, you know, it's like if you're eating a lot of processed sugar and seed oils, and you're like, oh man, I'm going to try this liver thing every day. It's like, well, no, that you should start here first, you know, and we create a hierarchy of like, let's get our foundation right before we start to throw in some random thing. Like, I'm just going to try keto now. It's like, okay, but I don't think you evaluated, you know, were you getting enough protein? Did you get your energy balance equation right? Have you been moving? Have you been hydrating? And have you tried at least to just like increase the quality of your food each day and get protein for breakfast? Like, did we start there? No. Keto could work because it might fix some of these things, but you're gonna say it was keto and it wasn't actually keto. It was just, you did the basics, and you could have done that with eggs and oatmeal. Yeah.
I really want to dig into something that you just mentioned briefly, which is you were afraid of eating more fat. And I feel like fear is such an important thing to pull out here, because I think that a lot of the changes that people make on a dime are motivated by fear, and that some of the marketing language can also try to spark fear to try to get people to grab onto something and react to something. And so can you talk a little bit about, you know, for example, like, you know, approaching animal-based eating because you're afraid of vegetable toxicity versus like open to a new way of eating or something like that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I see the argument for animal-based eating as I know that there is discussion about plant toxicity, but what I hear more is that the narrative for the past however long is you should be afraid of animals. You should be afraid of eating meat. There's way more fear around meat eating.
Yeah.
And so in an effort to like encourage a behavior, this is like, it's kind of, maybe it's the same or maybe it's opposite. I don't know how I'm thinking about this, but it's like, look, don't fear all this stuff. Actually, you should, like, I remember to get people to start paleo, it was like, you can eat all the bacon you want. And they're like, yes, okay, let me do paleo. You know, it's like, you had to like take the thing that they're afraid of, that they were told to fear or told that was bad, and be like, it's okay over here.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what's like drawing people to animal-based diet, or one of the ways to like entice people over is like, look at all this amazing food I get to eat. You get to eat all this bright, delicious, you know, seasonal fruit. You get to eat meat. You get to eat steak. You get to eat
cheeseburgers.
You get to eat bacon cheeseburgers. And, you know, I don't think people are like, ooh, I get to eat raw liver. Like, you know, they're more like, I get to eat that kind of stuff. Like, they see the tomahawk steak. They're like, dude, you eat a tomahawk every day? Like, that's dope. You know, it beats my lean chicken, dry chicken. There is this, like, this element of, I think there's of course an element of fear that a lot of people play up and then people buy into. In that regard, like I think it's maybe the fear part is just to like get people to question their deeply held beliefs, you know? And I think if you were to poll 100 people, be like, hey, and you put it like, what's more unhealthy? What are you afraid of? And you put an egg yolk and you put kale on the screen. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get, 89% click the kale button. That's the thing that's better. Or they're afraid of the yolk.
They're afraid of the yolk, right?
And so I think that's kind of how somebody who wants to be really like, that might be, I mean, that's a tactic. That's a tactic that Carnivore MD 2.0 is using to sort of highlight like, hey, there are potentially things that are problematic about plants that you've never thought of, because there's been a very, very strong narrative to prop this up as the healthiest thing, which came after this was demonized incorrectly. So it was kind of this like weird story of, heart disease showing up in the mid 1900s for the first time in human history ever. What the hell? We're getting heart attacks now? Like, people having heart attacks? Never seen this before. Oh, well, let me do some weird epidemiology. Oh, it's fat. Fat's bad, and then great. For the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years, don't eat eggs, don't eat red meat. It's bad. And what happened over the course of those decades was that heart disease showed up and it got exponentially higher. It just got worse and worse and worse with the avoidance or the minimization of the problem food. And so I'm just talking about the narrative that like somebody comes in is like, dude, this thing has been, we've been told to be fearful of this for 60 years. Let me flip the script. This shit's bullshit. You don't eat this toxic plant thing. Like, and so that's again, like a tactic to fight a tactic that was out there perhaps. And I'm not saying it's like, I mean, we don't do fear-based stuff, or at least I don't feel like we do. But, in our early days of ATS, it was like, be afraid of the high intensity in a way. It was kind of like, hey, we're the anti-high intensity because high intensity crushed me in a way that wasn't sustainable. It was great for sport. It was great for performance, but it crushed a lot of our customers who were beat up and burnt out. Yeah. And so we're like, again, I'm not saying that was the tactic we used, but high intensity was like the gold standard. It was everything for years. And we're like, no, it could be bad. It could be bad. It could be bad. Look at this. Yeah. And so it's oftentimes just I see it as like balancing the energies that are out there too.
Yeah. Well, it's super important to think about the narratives because all of the narratives from the past were based on research that is now outdated. And so now that's a huge kind of marketing mountain for the nutrition world to conquer.
Totally.
Now there are these new narratives. Maybe those are going to be completely outdated.
That's right.
Yeah. And so when someone is taking all this in, okay, it seems like I've got to kind of try it for myself. I've got to like do some self-experimentation. What's the central question about like, is this working or not? What should people be asking themselves?
Yeah. How do you feel?
Yeah.
Are you, are you thriving?
Are you thriving?
I mean, that's Carnivore MD's line.
Yeah.
He says, he's like, hey, by the way, if you're thriving, don't listen to anything I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you're thriving on kale and broccoli and spinach and the things that he's saying are not maybe as good as they might, be led to believe that they are, don't change anything.
Yeah.
But really, and like, I think I kind of, to some degree, have said that it's like, if you are doing great, like, you don't need to start weight training. If you never weight train, but you feel amazing and you got good metabolic health and you have great energy, then don't bother. It's like, I want to lose body fat. It's like, okay, well, you might want to start weight training. I don't want to start doing that. It's like, but you want to lose body fat. Like, you're clearly not satisfied, and this is the way, and you've tried it other ways, and like, just come try it now. Mm-hmm. Now's the time.
Yeah.
So you have to have your own measurements of that. And unfortunately with social media comes this like, oh, am I thriving? I mean, I see people just winning every day on there. Like, it seems like Liver King is just on a freaking caffeine high every moment. And he's so amped and so vibrant, and just like, I'm like, I want whatever he's got, because
sell it to me.
it's so, but granted, like, there's 24 hours in a day, and if you compile all his Instagram stories, like, we get about 5 minutes of his day. Yeah. And it could be he could be the most amped up in those 5 minutes of his whole day, I get the sense that it extends beyond that, and he truly exudes this, like, I have just a passion for life, and I get to spend it with great people, and that excites me. So I want some of that too. Yeah. But is that your metric of thriving? What is thriving for you? And, and forget about like, what is utopia me in my like optimal state? Just like, am I better than yesterday? Am I feeling, if I feel like I'm not at my best, then just, can we get 1% better? And is this thing making you feel 1% better? Or is the pursuit of it so consuming that you're kind of, it's just a wash. Like, I physically feel better, but I'm like constantly thinking about it. And like, and this is a place that I fall victim to, is that, I operate at a pretty high level of function. And I have for a number of years. And so the margins for me to like get better are very small. Like, but I think like, oh, I could feel twice as good. I could be twice as good as this. Like, I still have this perhaps naive belief that I could just be this ultra human or something. I don't even know. But I still experiment with things in pursuit of feeling better, but also growing my knowledge base and growing my understanding of what's out there. And I always deep dive on these things beyond what is probably optimal for me feeling my best and thriving. Like, and it's not like, oh, I ate too much liver. It's like, I spent so much time researching this and on podcasts and listening and, trying to align everything in my life to it, that it's like, it
takes over. It
can take over, or it can at least negate any benefits that I might feel from it. I do that almost knowingly. And, because my purpose behind it is not just for self-betterment, but for the, growth of knowledge and then sharing it with others, because that's the career path and purpose that I'm on too. So anyhow, I'm just saying that like, I can fall victim to this like over consumption of a concept, in search of like, and this is the person that's out there is like, I went plant-based and now I am just like, everything I do is plant-based and I talk about it with everybody. And it's like, it's the CrossFitters. Like I started CrossFit, I started feeling better. Now it's my religion. All I talk about, all I do. No. And like, it's like you sort of like alienate the people in your life that aren't doing CrossFit. And I don't want to alienate the group of people here that like aren't eating liver every day. Like, I'm talking about it a lot. I know that I am. I know that it's like something that's on the tip of my tongue regularly. And I started to get that feeling from the people in my circle. I was like, yeah, it's time for me to tone it down. Because I think I'm just taking up too much space with it. And that's not the goal for those people in my life. And it's certainly not the goal for me. I don't want to make the world around me just a product of what my my interest in incremental betterment of my physicality and my mental function.
Yeah. Well, I do think that's an important point because the mental aspect of stressing about nutrition, I think, is something that a lot of people deal with silently.
Totally.
So, your mental health as part of what you're eating and taking in and applying to yourself is also a huge component.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're into the 45th minute of the podcast. So
I love this topic. I could keep going on it, but
I do too. And sometimes when we love a topic, the listeners don't like it.
I know. On to the next.
So if you guys liked this, hit us up with some messages. Give us some feedback. You know the place to do that. Head over to the DMs on Instagram. Slide into the comments on this YouTube video if you're watching it on functional.bodybuilding, and or send us a email at support@functional-bodybuilding.com, and that will get to us. And if you really don't know how to get a hold of us in the day of social media, then you're probably not being influenced by social media influencers.
Just let the algorithm serve it to you.
This point in the podcast, so don't worry about it.
Hopefully we'll show up on your Explore feed soon.
All right, take care.
See ya.